left side of things. Before we get started into the heavy conversation that I have for y'all today, I want to send a shout out to Congressman Andre Carson for his fun karaoke party. And thank you for hanging out with the folks and talking to the young people. I'm going to tell you something. I can't speak for Congressmember Van because I haven't actually been in his personal space. But I'm going to say this. Of the 9 congressional folk that we send to Washington, D.C., Congressman Carson is never, ever afraid to come home and talk to his people. Congressman Carson is never afraid to come kick it with his homies, pick up a mic, and do some karaoke. If your congressman is too afraid to come out or go into their district, his or her district, because right now we only have binary people. If you scared to go in their district, then they not about the people. They in it for themselves. And so you ought to question those elected officials if they're too scared to come hang out with their constituents. And I'm telling you what, Congressman Carson is the dopest. I enjoy his time he gives to us and the hard work that he is doing in Washington. I'm telling you, I feel good about being able to support him. I feel good about being able to vote for him. I like the direction he's going. I like the way he handles stuff. Plus, he teaches me things. You know, he be trying to tell me to calm down a little bit. You know, he want me to be a little bit more respectful. I be trying, boss, but some of your colleagues, some of those, I don't know if you guys saw it today, but Jim Banks was on a veterans committee, and they're trying to talk about how we improve the lives of veterans, and he wanted to talk about critical race theory. He wanted to talk about, lambasting some. I'm telling you, Jim Banks has got to go. All he is doing is trying to be divisive. He doesn't offer up anything. He does not offer up any solutions to any of the problems that Hoosiers have. So why is he there? Why are we electing him? Why are we sending him to Congress? We got to get rid of Jim Banks. Y'all need to holler at my girl, the chair of the Huntington County Democrats and the 3rd District Democrats, Christine Bohm, because she's going to need your help to get somebody elected in District 3, because I'm telling you, Jim Banks is terrible. This guy is bad, but he's not the only one. No. We've got more people that we can discuss. Did you see? Did you see what Tyra Keita did the other day? Did you see yesterday?
Yes.
He decided that he wanted to, because it's not about improving lives for Americans or Hoosiers. It's about attacking Joe Biden. And so whatever President Joe Biden does or says, they're going to attack it as something horrible. And it could have been the exact same thing that idiot orange dude did. But if Joe Biden does it, then it's a problem. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know. See, the problem with them not wanting to study critical race theory, which we do not teach in the 4th grade, and we don't teach it to 4th grade students. It's a college, advanced studies class. But the reason why critical race theory is there so that we can understand how policies were created and crafted and the racial element that was involved. The idea that we don't want to study that this dude from Spain got lost, never actually stepped foot on mainland America, but then enslaved and murdered and raped and killed the indigenous people of the land. We want to hold him up and exalt him. You can't discover, as my girl, I get on a roll, as Carolina Castorino said, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, indigenous people, we have existed on this continent for thousands of years. This is where we're from. So there is no discovery. You cannot discover something that was already occupied. But this guy wants to run around and talk about, for me, well, let me get it straight. He wants to say that we need to honor Christopher Columbus because he discovered America. But we already know he didn't do that. And then he added the religious element onto it. And he feels like that we're trying to alter the history of America. No, we're not trying to alter the history of America. We're trying to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. We're trying to tell the truth. And I don't understand why, if you're ready to exalt somebody like Christopher Columbus who got lost, let's be clear, he got lost. You cool with somebody that got lost, and you're cool with the mistreatment of natives and Africans, Native Americans and Africans, and you're down with that, I'm going to need you to check you. Mm-hmm. If you think that's the kind of person that we ought to exalt, then I'm going to need you to check you. When you know better, you do better. You may have learned in 1st grade that Christopher Columbus discovered America through the propagandized version of American history. But when you know better, you do better. When you learn that that's not the truth, don't sit around. Don't keep repeating the same dumb stuff over and over again. And Todd Rokita, you're supposed to be looking out for all the people. Why can't you see the human lived experience of Native Americans and go, you know what? Maybe there's something to this because these are my constituents too. Maybe I should try to embrace and understand what they're thinking and feeling instead of being all behind hurt, being all butt hurt because the European who got lost and was a rapist and a pillager is not exalted by everybody. Why don't you try to examine that, and why can't you figure out why you don't see the humanity in other people who don't look like you? That's a problem. This man is the highest law enforcement official in our entire state, and he can't see the humanity of all people? Think about that. But then he really ain't got time to do that when he keeps on having, infighting with the governor. They spending all your little tax money fighting each other. So I'm just going to throw that out there. That's my rant for today because I feel like I have a really good, really, really, really great guest today. Oh. Well, one of the things, you meet people all over the place doing so many different things, and I mess up, and I don't always remember when I first met somebody, but I remember the first time we connected, and that's always more important to me because I may meet you in a crowded room, and you're one of 500 people, right? Because you and I both have been to events where there's lots of people, but we were in French Lick this year, and we sat down and broke bread. And we broke bread, had breakfast, and we sat down and talked, and I was just completely blown away by you. I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, man, when you don't get to sit down, y'all, welcome to the show, Sarah Vitale.
Hi, everybody.
She is with the Indiana Democratic Women's Coalition. I'm so glad that you're here. I know that you were a fire. Oh, you're a firebrand. So tell the people who you are and where you come from so we can get this conversation started.
All right, so I don't want to disappoint, but I'm not a native Hoosier.
I'm not either.
I'm from upstate New York, and I came here 8 years ago to teach at Ball State, or 7-something years ago. And when I was accepted to Hoosier Women Forward, and they gave me all of the Hoosier Women Forward, apparel, I said, well, it's happened. I've been now deemed a Hoosier woman. I think that helps. So no, I'm from upstate New York. I moved here to teach at Ball State. I teach philosophy. And I have gotten involved in some local politics since I've been here, and I've loved it. And, doing Hoosier Women Forward and going to French Lick and meeting folks like you has been really meaningful for me.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it was. I knew that you obviously were active and engaged and doing things, but until you really sit down and have a conversation with somebody, you don't really know what they're thinking and feeling. Now I'm feeling like I hope I didn't say nothing stupid. She's studying philosophy. You're a professor. What made you get off? What pushed you into the higher academia role? Because that's how you feed yourself.
You're talking about Christopher Columbus earlier, and it's precisely that. So I went to college at a small Jesuit school in Syracuse, New York, called Lemoyne College. And we took this trip the summer after my sophomore year, and it was to Guatemala, and it was to take a class called The World of the Other. And it was a class in globalization. And the idea was to situate ourselves in the global south and think about what globalization is like for people in what have been termed peripheral countries or the global south or something like this. And it was world altering. I saw things from a new perspective. I had this framework of globalization to understand it. We read texts about the colonization of what are called the Americas. We read all sorts of work by Latinx thinkers. It was amazing. And it was at that point I thought, well, I need to keep on getting to the bottom of this. And when I graduated from college, I was like, well, I'm not at the bottom of it. So I need to go to grad school. And that's what kept my trajectory in school. And I've learned that you don't just get to the bottom of it by spending a lot of years in school. However, I don't regret it because I did establish or develop some theoretical frameworks for understanding a lot of the world, I think, and a lot of my own experiences. And I also love teaching. So it's this moment where you can connect with people and try to show them every week that another world is possible, that they are the people who can change this world, that they can take some time out each week and think a little differently. So that love of teaching kept me in the profession.
I love it, and I think that's fantastic because there, you gotta. I think it should be more of our human nature, and we should express our natural desire of curiosity, right?
Oh, I totally agree.
And I think when we talk about these parents, and I wrote an IBJ article about it this past week, where it was published this past week about the really bad behavior of parents attacking school board members and threatening them and all the things that they're doing. And it's like, why are you trying to stifle natural curiosity? Granted, we're not teaching critical race theory in fourth grade class. It's just not being done. But the idea that there's certain words that people want to eliminate from the vocabulary in school. Now we're trying to say, listen, kids, don't be nuanced in your thought process. How does that make you feel as a teacher when you see a lot of these folks just acting ugly at school board meetings, and B, the idea that they want to stifle curiosity?
Well, I had this conversation with my students actually today because I'm teaching a class called Critical Theory. And it's a class that kind of goes back to Marx and then works through this German school called the Frankfurt School, and then looks at how it's influenced feminists and race theorists today. And we have the last section of the class is called Critical Race Theory and Critical Theories of Race. And so it teases out what's this one thing called critical race theory that starts with Kimberly Crenshaw and Derek Bell and analyzes in the 70s and 80s a way about how the law, maybe de jure, doesn't say racist things, but de facto and how it's applied has racist effects and sometimes had racist intents in creating the laws that might be race blind. So, that is what critical race theory is in like a real nutshell. But if we think of critical race theory a little bit more broadly and think about it as a way to understand structural racism, then yes, maybe people are teaching that in the K through 12 schools, and they should be. And this is something Muncie Resist, which is an organization I chair, an indivisible group in Muncie, Indiana, where I am. We had a couple guests on an event a week or so ago. The event was called Critical Insights, and we talked to a couple professors who are in the Teachers College at Ball State about what critical race theory is, what social emotional learning is, why these people are so scared of it, are they beneficial, and what can we do? And the part about why the people are scared of it seems to be a real age-old story. It's a fear of. I think it's actually more complicated because I don't want to say that all racism is based just in fear, because I think a lot of it is based in like a real affective hate. So it's not just people are afraid of people who are different. Like there's something worse there even. I think for a lot of the people who are involved, like a lot of those parents going to Unify Westfield, Unify Carmel, Purple Parents here. There's a ton of them. They're all over. So you can look this up. There's one in your area of the state, I promise you. And those parents, most of them, I would say, they want their kid to have a good life. They care about their children's values. They want those values to be like their own. They like the term unify. I don't think they're necessarily going to these meetings with malicious intent. The people who are leading them have malicious intent. They're getting money from the Heritage Foundation. They're getting money from all sorts of right-wing think tanks, etc. And they're pushing legislation. So several states have outlawed critical race theory, or as you say, banned certain words from school. And I was talking to a veteran teacher who teaches at Muncie Central the other day, and she said if some of these laws are passed, so much of what she's done will be illegal, which is basically just teaching the truth. So teaching history, she said, has been made partisan. People are thinking about teaching history as a partisan issue when it's teaching the facts, like, what happened. And of course, teaching us to analyze it and understand it and different perspectives of it. It's not just like A happened, B happened, C happened, but how it shapes our world today. And yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's
I'm fired up. I'm fired up.
no, but you know what? And you said that, and that was my natural reaction because it was like, yes. How do you? I mean, it really. I mean, it really goes back down to how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? How do you
Right.
know? How do you explain? You know, people want to say, why are we worried about something that happened 400 years ago? No, dear, it wasn't 400 years ago. It was literally 1964 Civil Rights Act, 1965 Voting Rights Act. Is 56 and 57 ish years ago. It's within our
2020 execution of George Floyd.
I'm,
Um,
exactly. And my point is like you can't pretend like that thing in the back didn't happen. You know, because it was 400 years ago. Like when basically you get here, you guys start showing up at 1619. That's the project. I love it, and not gonna tell me nothing different. But where are the people that used to be here? Oh, they just, oh, we good. We'll kill ourselves. We will. You know what I'm saying? You can't actually explain where the Native Americans are, where the indigenous people are, unless you talk about the historical aspects of those things. You can't explain how African Americans got here if you don't explain the historical concept. So to suggest that, oh, talking about something from 400 years ago, we should be focusing on now was created because of 400 years ago. I'm sorry, I get hyped about it.
well, and it's so true. And racism and the Atlantic slave trade is this like original sin of the U.S. culture, and it's something we've never dealt with properly, and so we're not going to be able to get over it. We're not going to be able to get beyond it because we haven't really reckoned with it.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the reason that we haven't reckoned with it is there's people who very much benefit from it, and would like to keep their benefit, and are really afraid. Language like white people are becoming the minority. Well, why should that matter? Well, it matters to some people, and that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting when it matters to them. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of these kind of dog whistles that are sent off, and Rokita, criticizing Indigenous Peoples Day, I also want to put together this Parents' Bill of Rights. And, I promise you, so he's speaking to them. He's like speaking their language. And Representative Sue Arrington was visiting the high school here in Muncie recently. And she said to the students, she said, look out for this legislation in the next session because our legislative session ended before some of this purple parent nonsense hit a fever pitch. But we will follow suit, and that's horrifying. And so we
Mm-hmm.
need to spend these next months um, preparing, thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, how are we going to respond to crazy bills, and what will happen. Like I said to my students today, it's possible that the unit I'm going to teach at the end of this class will be made illegal in Indiana.
Mm-mm.
Now, it's very likely that they'll start with K through 12, but I teach at a public institution, and so it's very likely that, like, what I'm saying. So then what do? Do we take the title off of it and just teach it anyway? Are we going to have students ratting out their professors? But this seems like very dangerous territory.
Well, and the other part about that was, you mentioned, I had to write it down because I didn't want to forget it. Parents' Bill of Rights. Which parents? All parents, or just some parents? Because a parents' Bill of Rights, that means, if I'm a parent and apparently I'm black because that was the name they gave me, does my parents' Bill of Rights have the same weight as somebody else's parents' Bill of Rights? And so I don't know if they even went all the way through with that because you're saying, oh, these are the parents' Bill of Rights, they can decide, blah, blah, blah. But wait a second. Which parents? Do all parents?
No, and you are not the parent they care about.
Of course
They,
not.
they have cared about um, this community of. It's so awful. Like Indiana has been like a proving ground, a testing site for awful educational policies. Voucher system here is larger than I think, at least at one point, it was larger than in any other state. We give vouchers to parents who could very well afford private school. And then so that's our money, our taxpayer money is
Our
going to
public,
parents who want to
yes.
send their kids to Christian schools. And then we have this, school choice program where you can just drive your kid to a different district. Well, who can drive their kid to a different district, right?
Exactly.
Like you have to have the time, you have to have the money. And when I first moved here, and I saw school advertisements on billboards, billboards saying, "Come to our school district." I was astonished because where I'm from in New York, you go to the school district where you live. Like it's not like a question. But now schools are having to compete for parents and to compete for children, really. And then they're going to have to market themselves to that crazy denominator, the people who are leaving and not taking care of the masses of people who are already there. And so they're going to be afraid of critical race theory. They're going to be afraid of anything that gets the purple parent people in a little tizzy,
Yeah, I mean,
which is horrible.
and this is nothing new. They've been doing this forever. Like this
Right? It's
school
nothing new.
voucher,
That's so
this,
important.
and that's again, if you study history, then you'll know that there have been school districts that instituted, voucher systems when they integrated schools in the South and whole school systems shut down. And instead of letting little black kids get an education, they shut the school system down. The state gave the white parents vouchers to go to private schools. This is nothing new. But they've been doing everything that first it was defund public education, right? We're going to go ahead and we had white flight, and where public schools were much more integrated or with forced integration, white folks said, I don't want my kid going to school with little black kids, so I'm going to move out. So then you had these school systems that were underfunded, under resourced, and then they said, well, since your school might be underfunded, under resourced, why don't you just leave the school altogether? We'll just create this third class of school or this new class of school. So this is nothing new. It has been building and building and building. And now the next thing is, what are you want to kill the school, defund the school, and then determine what type of education can be in the school. So that we have a bunch of people running around who don't have any real nuanced view of the world. We have really reduced our children into just regurgitation beings.
Well, I think we've been working at that for a real long
Yeah.
time. And, my students today were saying we're reading this text about how schools shape people into the individuals they are. And this is an old text. This is like Althusser from the 60s. And he talks about the kind of ideology imposed on people by the schools. And he says that schools teach students the values they need to live in a certain culture. And it's interesting because these purple parent people, they're saying we don't want our kids to learn values. People have been learning values all these years in schools. The problem is whose values?
Exactly.
And my students said they gave examples today of unfair dress code enforcement, really sexist stuff. Examples of one student said they said, well, we get these like yellow, green, red if you're being good or bad in elementary school, and he got yellow for asking a question too loudly. His voice was too loud. Obviously stuck with him, right?
I'd have got a red all the time then, huh?
I would be in trouble. Yeah, so we would definitely be in trouble. And so they've been teaching values. Stand for the flag. The certain story we learned about Columbus. The story we learned about Thanksgiving. Like they've been teaching values all this time. It's just whose values. And every once in a while, other people say, well, we need a different set of values. And this is like a conflict in what it means to be America, really, because there are some good parts of our Constitution of what it means here, like freedom and this desire to be able to pursue the best for yourselves. I definitely believe in that, but it is something that we're always on contested ground because it's like freedom for who and how.
Oh, I love it. See, y'all, do y'all see why I fell in love with her at breakfast? Do you see why? Listen, we better, we can actually take this conversation and just shift it a little bit. And we
Okay,
talk
I'm
about
ready.
we talk about who we are as women, and how we craft policies and our role in all of this. Like you know the stats, you know the statistics. Women are the majority in this state, yet we are not the majority of our elected officials around the state.
And
And
that's an understatement.
I know you got stats. Talk to us about who Indiana Democratic Women's Coalition is first. Let's talk about this organization.
So the Indiana Democratic Women's Coalition is new. But we started as a group of women getting together from different groups. So we have people from the Democratic Women's Caucus down in Bloomington. We have people from the Indiana Women's Action Movement up in northern Indiana. We have some people associated with Hoosier Women Forward. We have people, all sorts of people. And basically, a couple of these women were thinking of doing an event to analyze this question of how Indiana is 38th in terms of oh, now I'm going to forget. We're 38th in one and we're 48th in the other. And I think it's 48th in terms of local and 38th in terms of at the state
State level.
level
Okay.
women's representation. But both of those are bad numbers. And how are we going to communicate this? So we
48.
got together, we decided to put on a roundtable. And Destiny Wells and I, Destiny is the deputy chair for in coalitions and engagement and all sorts of cool things.
She really is.
She's wonderful. She's not watching right now because she's flying to DC for the Truman Conference, which is really exciting.
Okay.
So I'm going to be really excited to hear how that goes. But Destiny and I had facilitated a couple other conversations for the state, for the Democratic Party, not for IDP. Not IDP didn't ask us to do this, but for Democrats in the state. And IDP, I think, liked it. We could ask them. But we had one conversation about visions for the Democratic Party, what we need going forward. A lot of great people on that. And then from that, from something Robin Winston said at that, actually, he said, well, we need to think about this when we get a new chair. And then when we got a new chair, Mike Schmuel, he and Vice Chairwoman Mila Eldridge came on and we had a conversation with them. And so Destiny and I started just being like a couple Hoosier ladies who are having conversations with people on Zoom about facilitating these discussions like you, just in a different kind of format. And a couple people, Regina Moore was one of them, said, well, can you come here and talk to us about, doing one about women? And we got together and, I think it was Destiny who said, well, this is not a one event thing. Like this has got to be a series. We have to start with one and develop more. And then from thinking about it as a series, we're like, well, we're all from these different organizations in these different parts of the state. Like this is like a coalition. We're getting together to increase women's representation in politics through Democratic politics. We don't want more Republican women. We want more women in office. We want it to be 50-50, and we want them all to be Democrats.
I'm definitely with that because I some of these Republican women are quite scary, and I don't even know why we are accepting them in civil society in many cases, and they're women. Listen, the chick with the gun and the big old gun. You better go get one of these before some bazooka large thing. Who needs that? Well, you better get you one before they ban it. I mean, or I get really frustrated because as women we're often pit against each other anyway, right? When it drives me crazy when I was on a call with Southern Indiana down in Evansville, and I was at a conference, and this particular conversation was about LGBTQ folk plus and essentially affirmative action. And as typical, as usual, some hetero, straight, white, Christian male pipes in about, unqualified minority groups getting an opportunity. But they don't ever have a problem with unqualified males getting opportunities because they get them all the time. In fact, they get a chance they get the opportunity, they get to screw it all up, and we give them a second chance. But women are often held to a much higher standard.
Oh, no.
We are not allowed to be assertive. We're not allowed to be loud and aggressive and confident. We're supposed to ask for permission. What are some of the things that you guys are trying to do to dispel a lot of those myths?
Dana, I've been called a bulldozer recently.
What?
And
I'm sorry, you're heavy machinery that moves the earth?
Yeah. Well, maybe that's not the worst thing to do, but
Who does that?
I think that, if I were a man, I would just be confident, right?
Yes.
Or assertive. And so you're right. There's a double standard. There's people who get intimidated or unhappy.
Emasculated.
Yeah, sure. And so how does the Indiana Democratic Women's Coalition seek to respond to this? So right now, we're working on having several events that are helping women all throughout the state see that women are doing great things. Because I think a lot of times people don't know. So several of the people who have come onto our events, and now we've had 2 events as the Democratic Women Series. Our first one was a roundtable in July, and our second one was an event called Organized Women Win. about women's organizations and women organizing, and that was in September. And our next event will be in January, and it's about reproductive rights.
Ooh.
And it'll be around the anniversary of Roe. And at this moment where, we were saying that the legislative session is going to be bringing with it probably anti CRT and SEL things, they're sure going to have more attempts at abortion bans, because we already have some of the most draconian abortion laws here in the state and not enough Planned Parenthood. And so we already have that. And so we want to have an event in January for women to join and talk about that.
I love it.
And so I think one of the big steps in all of this is showing women that there are other women doing this work, and then to say, we want you to run. And so we want to do some recruitment, partly through this event and these events, and then moving forward from that. So we want to be calling the women afterwards, because have you heard the statistic that it takes women they have
Mm-hmm.
to be asked
Mm-hmm.
7 times,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we got to get asking. We got
Yeah.
to get asking.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing. Ask everyone that seems like that would be interested, because I was never asked. Right?
Yeah, see, and like obviously you're interested because this is, you run for office, you do all this work, but you were never asked. See,
I was never not. I mean, before I ran for. I mean, here I am because I don't fit. Like I don't listen. When I'm confident and comfortable in who I am. So when I say I don't fit, it's not my opinion of me. It's often
right,
other people's opinions of me, which really don't mean a whole hill of beans anyway. But
right,
when people look at what a viable candidate is, sometimes they reduce it down to aesthetics, right?
sure.
But Mitch McConnell, look at him. How you gonna reduce a woman down to her aesthetics when Mitch McConnell?
Dana, if we're judging somebody by their looks, we would definitely be putting you front and center for elections.
We would
And
now.
so
We've grown as humans since 2015. We've grown.
I think we have in a lot
We've
of
grown.
ways. Thank God. And I think the response to Trump was, a big part of that.
Yeah, well,
Um,
yeah. And so we as women, like you said, we have to be asked 7 times. And then, because we always want to say, well, we always question a woman's family, who's taking care of the family. I don't see people asking men candidates, well, who's watching your kids while you running for office?
this is so old too. Like my mother, when she was applying to be a school teacher in a school, when she was younger, they said to her, "Well, you have young kids. What happens if one of them gets sick?" And she said, "Well, I guess I'll have to take the day off." But my father wouldn't be asked those questions when he
No.
was applying for a job. And it's the same now. But the problem is there's some truth to it because, I have a friend who does research on work life balance, and women do a disproportionate amount, like people in heterosexual relationships, um, when both a man and woman are working, the woman does a disproportionate amount of the household work. And so, they call this the second shift. And that's a problem. And so women, they don't want to run because they have a lot of other things that have been put on them. And so I think that we need to do some work as women helping women. So if we're not going to get their husbands to watch the kids, like, we watch the kids. We, do the work that we need to do to get women to win.
Yeah. And now, not every person has the personality to be out front. Not everybody has the personality to be a candidate. Do you guys also talk about the other different roles that women can play in electing the right candidate that's looking out for women's issues?
Oh, totally. Every time that I've been on a campaign, I've thought, if all the people I knew would just give 1 hour of their time to this campaign, we would definitely win. And so I think that some people are intimidated at the idea of volunteering on a campaign. Like
Mm.
maybe they don't think they have the right skill set or they don't have enough time. Give the time you have. Because if the campaigns need phone callers, envelope stuffers, door knockers, all sorts of roles in a campaign. And that's what we need. We just need a lot of labor.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way. Another way is not as out front as being an elected official, but running for precinct committees.
Absolutely. Oh, I talked about that last week on the show because there was the Indy Star article that came out. I don't know if you saw that up in Muncie, but my buddy Josh Peters sent it to me. And it went into good detail about the legalities of precinct committee people and caucusing in people versus having special elections. And there was some positives and negatives about all of the conversation. But
I need to check that out because I had Josh Peters came on to our Drinking with Dems when we were doing
yeah,
that.
I'll send
And
it to
yeah,
you.
that sounds,
I'll send it to you in the email because he sent it to
yeah.
me. And the thing is that a lot of people get upset about the party chair being able to appoint or unappoint precinct committee people, and that's in the rules. It's written in law. It's etched in stone. They have the
Well, no, but it's not etched in stone. It's in the rule book, but the rules are subject to change.
well, and that's but even okay. I'll concede that. I will concede that. But here's the deal. Here's how we can eliminate that who got appointed and who got unappointed.
Run.
Run,
Mm-hmm.
run. If you run for precinct,
Precisely.
if you run for precinct committee person, they can't unseat you because you're an elected official. And so
Precisely.
I get. Trust me, and I was talking to Eddie Peters, and yeah, I love him. And we were talking about this, and like I do understand, and you get no argument from me about being frustrated when you see certain things happen. But and he was like, "What do we do?" And I was like, "The only way I know how to fix this is we get more people to run for precinct committee person, and then it's not at the discretion of the county party chair."
Yeah, and you were saying this earlier before we got on the call about how we often, sometimes there's some infighting in the party, or we complain about different parts of the party. Well, it doesn't make it look so appetizing for people to join our party. Brandon Evans once said it's like we're selling tickets for the Titanic. We don't want to advertise that way. Like we need to show that like we're actually, and I feel that way. Like first of all, it's fun.
Hello.
Down in French Lick was great. It was affirming. It's like I'm with a bunch of people who want to make Indiana better, who love where they live, who love their neighbors, and know how to have a good time. And so I think that people should want to join our party because it's a party, right? Like, why not? And I think that one way to do that is, so yes, we have to work within it. We can't be, trashing it all the time, and we can work to make it better. It's a real difference between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans really fall in line. They have a kind of right. And I like the part of us that we don't.
Mm-hmm.
The big tent that we cultivate lots of different interests and we have room for all of that. The issue is in Indiana, we have to win some elections. And we have to be able to get more of a seat at the table. And I think that one of the best ways to do that is through getting people to run for precinct chair, and then they might be interested in running for something else in the future. Or at least through being a precinct chair, they can get involved a little bit in how the sausage is made, helping with get out the vote, helping with party fundraising, helping with candidates.
I love it. I love it. And see, you mentioned something about Republicans falling in line, and I talk about it a lot too. And this is just an offhand thought. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But I'm wondering, they have their inaugural DEI class this year, where they've essentially handpicked some brown and black and gay people to be in their version of training to be a good Republican. Are you trying to tell me all those different lived experiences are now going to come and coalesce and be like, look, I see things the same way. I don't understand how that's going to work. I don't understand the people who are part of the class. I'm not dissing them. Do what you got to do to get to be involved. But I don't understand that. I never will understand how you can be down with an organization, and we just talked about how laws are written that have been implicit or have been I don't even know the terminology you just used. Have been subversive in their desire to disenfranchise you. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can get down with that.
And I had the same conversation recently with some folks about in Muncie. So there was going to be a send-off to the Women's March in Muncie, which was great, good event. And someone suggested, well, we should show that this is a women's issue, not a partisan issue, and get a conservative woman to speak. And I said, I don't think so. So I was opposed to that, and I said because first of all, you're not going to find really any Republican people who are supporting a woman's right to choose right now. It is the flashpoint issue.
Yep.
You know, you weren't going to be able to. You could find them in the '70s, but you're not going to find them now. And second of all, if a person is pro-choice and is a Republican, they should switch parties.
Well, I'm
And
not gonna say that.
you wouldn't.
No, because they could be pro-choice and anti-LGBTQ plus and anti Black Lives Matter. They could be, anti-Asian. No, keep your pro-choice bigoted behind over there. I mean,
You're right. You're right. You're right. And I guess I mean that right. And if a conservative woman is open on the issue of abortion, but she's not on all those other things, and that's why she's a Republican, then we don't want her speaking at the event either.
exactly. So that's the flexibility I think that we have as Democrats. I don't think as Democrats we are as rigid in our means testing on what it is to be a Democrat. Okay, I know a lot of people think we should be. I am not open to it. Right? Again, I am very much pro-choice, and I would prefer my Democrats to be pro-choice. I some of them aren't, but at the same time, listen, I'm gonna give you another example. The black church, the black church, in many cases, not all cases, so do not come for me, but in many cases, and especially the one I grew up in, was very much anti-LGBTQ plus, very much. Do you think as a party we could survive if we got rid of black Christians from our ranks because they were anti-LGBTQ plus?
You're so right, Dana. You know, when I was in the beginning of doing some organizing here in Muncie, we were talking about like the various groups, and there are a lot of groups that are Christian groups who very well might are they are they're anti-choice and they're anti-LGBTQ plus in various ways. They're not affirming churches,
Right.
so
Right.
they might say, "Oh, we're great, we love everybody," but their churches won't do gay marriages. They won't, and so you're not from a church. You're anti-LGBT. You are, like at least
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
I think. However, a lot of them are doing some good work in the city, poverty eradication, like all sorts of good things. And so people said to me in our work here, they're like, Sarah, like we're going to have to do coalition work. Muncie Resist is going to have to work with groups that we're not completely ideologically aligned with. And I think that's right. And even last night, we have several, 30 to 50, I believe, Afghan refugee families coming to move into Muncie. And so we're very excited. And this organic group popped up. Actually, we have a real uh, Afghan leader in our community. She's really wonderful. She's been here for quite some time. Bibi Barami is her name. And she had an organization called Awaken that does work in Afghanistan. So I think this is part of how this new group that's dedicated to helping resettle people came up. And Muncie Resist had a little information about them last night. And somebody asked at the event, well, how is this a resist thing? Like Holcomb supports it, and our Republican mayor supports it. And I was like, that's okay. Like I'm going to be on their side on the issues I agree with them with. So I'm not going to say I can't touch this because they're dealing with it. And so you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And I think that we have to do work though within our party at trying to speak to people with different types of values than we have, and maybe trying to see their perspective.
And we also have to understand, and I think this is as women, what we bring that's a little bit different. We are in many of us are mothers with multiple children. You can't, play favoritism to one kid versus the other kid. And so we've learned early on, to how do we compromise and make the most or the best of the situation. Not everybody is going to be happy. Not everybody's going to get what they want. But you know what? We got to keep the peace. We got to keep it moving. And maybe there's a lesson in this for everybody. And I think as women, we're more apt to we don't have to flex, right? We don't have to flex and show them how, we don't need to show them how powerful we are. And you know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying not to say it, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't
Well,
think that.
measuring.
Yeah, yes,
Measuring.
we don't need to measure because I don't think that's who. I just don't. I mean, I know that there's some very strong and aggressive women who want to woman up all the time, and they're doing that thing. But for the most part, I just haven't come across a lot of women who are in the public service arena that want to flex and squash and show you that they are more powerful than you are. Now, there are some that don't necessarily want to uplift everybody, but that's why we have organizations like this. If you don't want to be down with uplifting more women, then get away. And we at the Indiana Democratic Women's Coalition will do it, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that you're right. Like, I don't think that being competitive or being cooperative is mapped onto men and women, and it's not in some natural way. However, in our culture, women are often put into positions where they're more have to be more diplomatic and more cooperative, and men are conditioned to be more competitive and aggressive. And I think that, like,
Thank you
with
for explaining that.
certain what
I said thank you for explaining that because I screwed that all up. But thank you.
no, no, I'm not trying to,
No,
like,
no.
what I want to say, like, I'm kind of like building to say that there was a moment in feminism where I think a lot of feminists said, well, we need to play like the boys.
Right.
And we can be like them just as well. And that's true, but should we want to? And so what we want to do is take some of the, like, the positive things that have been denigrated as female
Yeah.
qualities, but that are actually pretty rad,
Yeah.
and, like, show them that, like, these things are better for organizing work and for connecting. And it's women who are doing the work. Like, I've been to some statewide Indivisible events, and I've been to a national call with Indivisible recently, and it's so many women. And so, like, women outside of women's groups, like the Indiana Democratic Women's Coalition, women are doing the organizing work, but they're not running for office. And so that is a problem.
Absolutely, but again, you look at most of our institutions throughout history. That is the way it has mostly been. Women do,
Sure.
men are at the leadership positions, and then women are in the support roles. Now, don't get it twisted. Those support roles have always been important.
Right.
They haven't been amplified. Now let's sprinkle everybody everywhere. And I think
Oh yeah.
I'm with you. I think I have been crying because, like, we do not have enough women, and when we do not have women elected to office, and we don't have enough women in decision making roles, right? We don't have enough women who are influencers, because if we did, we would you like I know the conversation changes when we're in the room and we're either initiating the conversation, listening to the conversation, and offering feedback.
hmm Yeah, and that's what I really love about Who's Your Woman Forward. Its goal is not just to get more women to run for office, but to get them in positions of leadership, in government, in business, in nonprofit sector. And, in so many areas of our lives, we might think that there's approaching parity, but we're often not. Fortune 500 CEOs, and, I could probably care less about that. But in higher education, like the
Yeah.
women who, like, make full professor, or women who are in positions of dean or president, there's a lot of problems there. And so they often come in at the same rates but don't advance at the same rates.
Mhm.
And so we have
Mhm.
this problem in all sorts of industries. And, what you say about building people up is important, because I think that there are people like you, who very regularly will shout out different folks. You turn the light onto a lot of different people, and that is just the best way to be,
That's the only way to be.
because it's just the more the merrier.
Absolutely.
Like, the just we're going to continue to lift each other up, and we don't need just the smallest slice of the pie, and to keep it to ourselves and to prevent other people from getting it. And we don't have to be territorial. And sometimes there might be a little impulse to be, but then we have to, like, have our friends help us check ourselves and recognize that there's, like, enough to go around, and we don't need to
Absolutely.
follow the playbook of the men who've come before us.
Absolutely. I mean, listen. Well, first of all, thank you for recognizing that, because that has always been one of my goals. Like, I have a platform. I created the platform. What are you gonna do with it? Just keep looking.
Hmm.
People gonna get tired of you. You better shine some light on some other people so they don't get tired of you. I mean, it literally is about use your platform to elevate other people with similar voices. You're not the smartest person in the state. You're not the most organized person in the state. There's other people that are doing things a whole lot better than you. So why not share that? What I do best, and then let's use this platform to get more people involved and show them that no matter what their skill set is, there's a place for them. But I think the other part of it is, you know, the wanting to hoard and keep things to yourselves. Nothing can grow that way. You've heard the old saying where, if you grasp something in your hand, you hold on tight, it can't grow, but if you open it up, it'll flourish and it'll do it. We've got to do that. I don't understand people who want to keep things to themselves. And don't get me wrong, I have an ego and it's pretty healthy. So
That's good. There's nothing wrong with having confidence in a sense of self.
absolutely. And I often look at situations and go, well, shit, what about me? I said, that was real right there to be like, well, what? Yeah, what about And I do
Well,
have,
it's natural
yeah,
sometimes to feel left out when you're left out, or to, yeah, that's totally natural.
yeah. But I think there's so much for so many, and I think our job, and I think you're taking it on heads on in Muncie and expanding it out by saying, let me show you and give you some of what I got to help you grow. And that's what we have to do. We're not trying to change you. We ain't trying to and I say we, and I'm not even really in that group, but I feel a part of it because we're all doing a little bit of the same work, just in different ways.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in the comment section later, which is a form for people to fill out if they're interested in joining the coalition. And we're working on ways to, so we're going to get everybody who's filled out the form, we're going to communicate with them, and because we want it. It started very informally, just as a
Mm-hmm.
group of people, not like handpicked from anything, just kind of happened. And now we're like, okay, like anybody can be a part of the coalition, and I think that that's good because people can represent different groups, people can represent different interests, different parts of the state, and that's what we want to do.
And I love it. And
Speaking,
then go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, I was thinking of the scarcity mindset, to like hold it close. I think that we're really taught that from living in a capitalist society, that we have to get ours,
Mm-hmm.
so and it's gonna somebody else is gonna take it away,
Yeah.
and so I think a lot of our culture is centered around that, and so then we have to fight against a lot of that when we're trying to do the good work in a party that wants to. And I'm not saying the Democratic Party is like an anti-capitalist party. There's all sorts of
Right?
different.
You got to clarify
Don't get afraid, people. Don't get afraid. But I am saying that the Democratic Party wants, a lot of us want, like what Elizabeth Warren believes we should be doing, is like holding corporations accountable, making them work for people rather than us working for them.
Absolutely.
And we have to do that by kind of combating this idea of scarce resources, just that we all have to hoard.
Absolutely, and I thought it was interesting. You mentioned Elizabeth Warren, and whenever you talk about Elizabeth Warren or you're talking about Bernie Sanders, I always think about the labor movement and
Yes.
the people that punch a clock, right? And that's a lot of us, a whole bunch of us. And the jobs report that came out last week showed that people quit jobs. Now, remember back in the summertime, Governor Holcomb cut off the
Good
extra.
for them.
Right. Well, Governor Holcomb cut off the money because, we going to cut the money off and people going to go back to work. You cut the money off, plus the whole program ran out, and people still quit jobs that had poor wages, jobs that had poor hours, poor working conditions, didn't take into consideration childcare and how much that costs, right? If I'm taking, a third of my income to pay for childcare, and I'm taking another half of my income to keep a roof over my head, then what am I doing it for? I mean,
Yeah, people are being rational actors, and they're
yes,
making decisions, in their best interest, and it is forcing the companies to pay them more,
absolutely.
and
They're
to
looking
give
at
more benefits.
they are looking at their ROI, just like businesses do. They're looking at their personal ROI and deciding
Yeah,
how much energy should I put in for this? And people,
totally.
yeah, I mean, and the other thing that was driving me crazy, and we're just kind of flowing right now, and I apologize because that's
It's
what
good. I
happens.
dig it.
Um,
Sorry for people if you're not flowing with us.
I'm flowing.
Um,
The other thing is it drives me crazy when they call them lazy or they don't want to work, and they nobody strives to be broke. But here you have a whole party in Washington that is getting paid six figures, and they're not even doing their job. They are supposed to be sitting there and compromising and working with the other side to come up with real solutions. And the only thing they can say is, "Oh, well, we're not going to do anything. We need to raise the debt ceiling, but we're not going to help you do it." What? So you want to call these people lazy, right? And call them shiftless or whatever you call them. But these people are actually getting our tax money at $100,000 a clip, and they're not even doing what we are paying them to do.
Right, and this is what we have to be much better at communicating to voters about, because they care about their bottom line and they care about their taxpayer dollars. And they have this idea that, oh, they're illicitly going to like the lazy workers or, immigrants or, all of this, when, they're actually subsidizing a lot of other people,
Yes.
including Walmart and, all sorts of things. And every dollar that any, individual gets of assistance goes right into the local economy.
It does.
Like people are using that money to pay for their food and their bills. And so that is money super well spent. It's not in the Cayman Islands or on somebody's second yacht.
Right? Or
Yeah.
on a phallus shaped ship to outer space for 4 seconds, for 4 minutes. I mean, and that's what I think it's important. We gotta have, we can have these serious conversations, and I think as women, we play such a pivotal role. We are in many cases the financial decider in our homes, because we decide on what's happening in our homes, and then we're the healthcare deciders. And so we need to be in positions to craft the policies that directly impact the decisions that we make in our homes. And I think it is so imperative that we, be aggressive and be assertive and be confident in our ability to lead, because we do it every day.
Yeah, exactly. That's so right, Dana. And those ideas that that women are in charge of household budgets and all these decisions, totally right. And we need a government that helps us do that instead of fighting against us when we do those things.
I love it. All right. Okay. You said you got an event coming up in January?
Yeah, January. It's going to be the third week of January.
Okay.
And it's going to be, so we have to, nail down a date.
Okay.
But it's going to be on reproductive rights, the week of January 17th. And then I'll put a link in the chat, in the comment section, for how to sign up to be a member of the Democratic Women's Coalition. And you can learn about all of the groups that we represent and that share in the coalition with us, that are doing great work and great trainings all the time.
Well, all I can say is, with minds like yours, being the voice and organizing such things, we can't go wrong, right? I chop it up with you, and I apologize for the people that are used to me having like a very rigid, show. But when you have a fresh mind and you have somebody that stimulates your mind, I just go. So y'all have to. There's so many areas that I could talk to her.
Oh, I know. Like when you mentioned unions, I'm like, oh, we have to go there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much, and you're right. We have so much to cover, and I love talking to you.
Oh my God.
So, we'll have to do this again in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope people feel what I'm saying. Like, it's one thing to have an organization. People can start organizations all day, all the time. But what kind of character, what kind of leadership, what kind of thought process do the leaders have? That's the thing you have to look at. And Sarah is bringing you some of the best that Indiana has to has had. And the fact that she's a New York transplant,
I choose it here, though. I choose it.
I love it. I love it. And I'm proud. God, the first time I talked, like I said, when I got a chance to sit down and break bread with you, it just changed everything. I knew you were strong. I knew you were doing your thing. But your brain is tight. And I'm telling you, people get behind people like Sarah, because they see the world very nuanced. And there's a whole group of us. There's a whole group of us. It ain't just a small group. And we can really, if we make the commitment to we got to improve lives, and the way we improve lives is through policies,
Yes.
that work, because there's other ways to improve lives. We're talking about improving lives through policy. You guys can get involved, and you can do this too, and you can
Mm-hmm.
be a part of this, and you have to do it by yourself. You got a whole family. Oh my God, Sarah, you are so dope. We're gonna do this again. In fact,
Thank you.
what we might do, and you talk it over with the ladies. Why don't
Get them
we?
all on here?
I've already got Deb Chubb
Yeah.
penciled in for a date.
Mm-hmm.
We gonna come on, chop it up. But it's all about getting this information out to people so that they know that there are places for them to go. You, Sarah, you, like me, you've probably been to a county and you went to a Democratic function and they went, I didn't even know there were other Democrats here. And that's what we trying to do. We gotta expand this.
Well, and it's one of the most affirming things for Democrats in the state for me is to connect up with people like you and Nicole and Regina and Destiny and Natalia, like, all sorts of really wonderful people who are doing great work in our state. And I feel exactly like you said, like with people like us doing this work and caring, we have to win.
Absolutely. And I thank you very, very, very much for coming on and talking to me. We're gonna do this again. But our hour is up. Can you believe it? Yo, Indiana's own Dana Black talking to Sarah Vitale from Indiana Democratic Women's Coalition. We chopped it up for the last hour. We talked about the organization, yes, but we talked about a lot of different issues. So if you missed it, scroll back through and just take a listen. In the meantime, next week I'm gonna introduce you to someone new. I'm gonna bring somebody new to the table. She's not necessarily a Democrat, but she's working on issues that we all care about. I can't wait to introduce her to you because she is really about our disabilities community, or different abilities community. So I'm looking forward to having her on the show. And on Saturday, mark it down, from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we are having the power of the black and brown vote out of out of Monroe County.
Mm-hmm.
Out of Monroe County with the Monroe County Democrats, the Monroe, I always messing up their black caucus down there, and the Latino caucus, the 9th District
Awesome.
Latino caucus. So it's a
That's
collaboration.
what we're doing.
You know what, and pat on my back moment. When I began the Power of the Black Vote, I wanted to get the information to my community about how we get involved in this policy making thing, because you can always hear somebody say, well, it ain't for me, it's just rich people, it's just this people, and I was like, nah, that's not what the law says.
Yeah.
And so now, and then we did a combined Power of the Black and Brown and down in Bloomington, and I'm working on one up in Fort Wayne. I'm still reaching out, but this is the same thing. Like I said, we doing the same work. Now you doing it with women. Let's talk about it. Let's get with it. And so so Saturday, Saturday, Saturday from 2 to 4, Zoom. There's a registration link. Find the event page. If you have somebody that's not on Facebook, send them the registration link so they can get on Zoom and listen to this conversation, because we're gonna have a good conversation about how we get involved. There's ways for everyone to get involved. So, Indiana's own Dana Black. Thank you, Sarah.